right, so Bob Coppage, CEO Simplex-IT, and welcome to the latest episode of BizTech Twists with my guest, Kevin Dutkiewicz, who is the tech director over at Simplex-IT.
Among many other hats I wear.
Oh, and seriously, this guy is a hat maniac of kinds, and not in terms of hats, but in terms of what he does. But anyway, what we're going to talk about today is, as a lot of people know, as CEO Simplex-IT, we do a lot of co-managed services. And I have written books on it. I have spoken at conferences. I've spoken in Paris to talk about co-managed. And yet, I've written the books, and yet there's actually a guy who makes it work, and that is Kevin. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to talk about, because we have to take the programs and products that the vendors create and that we use, whether it be endpoints, security, monitoring, management, backups, business continuity, disaster recovery, and we have to make them work in co-managed worlds, co-managed being that there's an internal IT department that we partner with. So we're going to make this kind of quick, and I'm going to go through some of the key points because I've done another video talking about this. And then we're going to ask Kevin as to what the better way or worse ways are that they could do this. So we ready?
I'm ready.
Cool. So number one, a vendor that we work with, do they actually talk about CoMITs? Do they actually talk about co-managed IT as an option? Is it part of their world?
It's usually one we have to pry for. We have been reevaluating our tech stack over the last 6 months or so, just going over different products, make sure they work, whatever. And one of my questions I give every single vendor is, how can I do this with co-managed IT? I have clients that will be logging into this, but I don't want them to have access to certain stuff. Most of the time it's we can kind of sort of do a thing. There's others it's just straight up, you cannot do it. And actually, one of the platforms we were looking at for SaaS backup, we're already a big partner with them. Their SaaS backup platform, zero support for CoMITs. So out of the gate, they were not in the running for a product for us.
And one of the telling things is that a lot of these vendors will have websites that say we do co-manage, but they will not say at all what that means. It's like, we like Spring. So cool. Second one, delegated access, meaning delegated access between both the MSP, us in this case, and the internal IT.
That's another one where permission sets are spotty at best. There are some of the vendors out there that you can set up permissions to give them only access to their stuff and really zoom in on just their environment. Others, the permission sets get a little wonky where I can't limit them from running certain scripts, or I can't see them, or I can't limit them from seeing other parts of the platform. So in RMM, we use the scripts area. I could name
remote monitoring and management.
Yep. One of the things I can do is I can create a script and publish that out there for one of my clients. But the thing is, if I name it specifically for that client, any other client can also see it at the exact same time, which can pose security, confidentiality. I mean, you name it, it's a problem. Sure. I should not be able to have any of that crosstalk, but cool. It's a problem we got.
And one of the things is that on the one hand, the vendor wants us to be able to manage multiple dozens, hundreds of clients simultaneously. And at the same time, they're also trying to make things more secure, hopefully, both of which go against a co-managed environment. So they have to actually spend some quality time fixing that. So cool. And this kind of gets into the next question, is layered access. So layered access, being able to access the tools for all clients versus just the individual client. That kind of makes sense just from an internal IT standpoint, right?
Yeah, and so as we ask more vendors, do you have this? It seems like more of them are picking up on it, or the more you talk, bring it up, the sessions at any of the different conferences we go to, they actually bring up co-managed as a thing. I mean, the small, medium business space is kind of drying up. So where's your next place to move? You go a little bit higher up the ladder where you've got a slightly larger organization. They've got their own internal IT. Hey, that's a good place to start working with them, especially your really small businesses with a single IT person. That person might want to take a vacation one day, right, or not answer the phone at 2 a.m. that's where leveraging those relationships can come in handy. Well, again, I don't want to give that person access to every one of our other clients' tools and environments.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Okay, flexible configurations.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's one where still co-managed is very much pretty rigid. There's not that much room to play in the space. There's a PSA vendor out there, maybe by that name, that is probably the most mature one I've seen, and there are still parts of it that I don't care for, that it's just not that flexible. It's a rigid thing. Something like mandating a field on a form. If I can, us, the MSP, we definitely want to have that field locked down because that improves my workflows. But one of our CoMITs clients, they might not need that one. They might not care about it at all, but it's an all or nothing throughout the entire platform. And It's seeing that kind of stuff over and over. You can bring it up and it goes into the queue of, oh, this would be great. And in 2034, we might actually see it on the board to get some dev time.
Absolutely. So to go along with that, flexible alerting.
That's another sore topic. There are
That's why I bring it up. I'm not going to bring up happy topics. I mean, come on.
Some of them just work. No, none of them just work. Flexible alerting. Sadly, the biggest alerting engine that everyone seems to be convinced is the only way to do this stuff is emails. I can't tell you the thousands of emails I get per day that just get shoved off to the side because I literally cannot work through them.
That explains why you don't reply to my emails.
What email?
Are you fed up with reactive IT providers who take too long to respond, let problems fester, and nickel and dime you for every little thing? Say goodbye to those frustrations by choosing Simplex-IT, home of Amazon's best-selling author and BizTech Twist host Bob Coppage. As Northeast Ohio's friendly neighborhood MSP, Simplex-IT has been providing top-notch managed and co-managed IT services since 2007, supporting hundreds of clients locally and across the United States. With a managed service provider like Simplex-IT, you'll benefit from proactive maintenance, 24/7 monitoring, and streamlined technology that will help you grow your business. Visit simplex-it.com for more information and to start experiencing stress-free IT today.
And I feel bad for some of our co-managed clients because I can't limit some of this stuff down. There are other limitations through like the Windows Event Viewer. There's no good way to go ahead and really focus in those alerts. Once they fire, it's just it. If they fire again, you get another. If they fire again, you get another, and over. There's no good way to limit that kind of stuff or tone it down enough to be sane.
Right.
The other is, just looking at tickets or SMS alerts or little toast notification. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to do it, but everyone is just email and that's it, which is annoying.
And then we get into the personnel standpoint. I think split personalities. Freud, split responsibilities. So like what we do with CoMITs with the full versus desktop versus servers. So getting the tools so that they recognize where the demarcation lies.
That's actually been a pretty tough one to try and configure. In our both RMM platform and in our PSA platform, trying to get that stuff to go to the right spot is actually really difficult. Take a workstation, a CoMITs workstation, where our client is the one who's responsible for the workstations, and then we are responsible for the servers. Well, first, we have to be able to generate an alert with the RMM. It has to be tagged appropriately that it's a workstation. Well, once that alert's generated, it gets kicked over to the PSA, and then you have to apply workflow rules to move that to the appropriate bucket. There's 1,000 limitations that unfortunately come along with that. I hear of other newer PSAs that are finally getting around some of that stuff. They're actually starting to understand that these are legitimate workflows that people actually need to be considering. And it's just not there yet for the ones we're using.
And that's an interesting point, though, is that in some cases, the tools, and we call them stamps, software tools, methodologies, portals, whatever, the ones that have been around long enough are feature rich. They've got all of these pieces. They've been tried. They've been true. And they're architected like dinosaurs. They're based on the MSP model of 10, 15 years ago. So it's very hard to get them to adapt to the new stuff. Whereas the new guys, They're adapted, with much more flexible, much more up to date, without all of the baggage, but they don't have all the features. So it's kind of like a which way do you go with? And it's not just true from the PSA or the RMM, which is basically your ticketing and tech time tracking as well as the monitoring, but it's for some of the cybersecurity tools. It's everything. Yeah, it's a dilemma across the board, and outside of the MSP, it's any provider of goods and services along those lines.
How many times both you and I have sat down with different vendors, say this is a great way that should be done.
Yeah.
Can we at least get it on the roadmap?
And we've had some good, and I'll call a vendor out on this one, Sophos, our cybersecurity. We've had very specific conversations with them about co-managed, and we're seeing the results. They've stepped up their game as far as some of the reporting and the like.
Took them 2 years to do.
Yes. But then there's other vendors where we've talked to them for much longer than 2 years.
Yelling at the wall behind you is more results.
I'll take that under consideration. And then 2 more, track change management.
That's getting really important in the compliance space. So one of the other vendors we just started working with, there is a whole section dedicated to just tracking all the changes that are going through it. And that's something I do try and highlight as I go over the tools with our co-managed clients, because if they have any compliance requirements of, hey, this password was updated, hey, this password was accessed by this person at this time, that can mean a lot depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, and especially if you're talking about not only is it with this person at this, but this company. Was it the internal IT people or was it the MSP? In our case, Simplex-IT. To know the difference there also gives you an idea of what the responsibility was and the liability questions and all of that kind of fun stuff as well.
Yep.
So cool. And then finally, training.
Training, this is one, unfortunately, there is so little out there about this one. Most of the training is for our techs, so the MSP's techs, which rounding up works, but unfortunately, a lot of it will get into kind of the bigger picture stuff. So it's all the client type information, or it's all the client, access, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it does make it very difficult to work with that kind of stuff. And we've had to roll our own training for most of the platforms, which is okay, but that's time consuming. I'd rather my techs work on tickets and projects and stuff like that and not have to create something I would hope the vendors who say they support co-manage actually had.
Right. And there's also the issue of, it's one thing to tell our own techs that here's the training you have to take and all of that kind of fun stuff. It's another thing to tell a client's techs that they have to take these training along the same lines.
Yep.
So the bottom line here is, if there were 2 things out of this whole thing we talked about, 2 things that you would hope the vendors would take away from this conversation to fix, what would they be?
Layered access. I mean, it's something where we have to create that separation of church and state between the clients and our stuff. And the other has got to be that training, because I don't feel that should be the MSP's entire burden. That really should fall on the MSP and the vendors themselves.
Absolutely. And just anybody who's on that vendor space and the like, we have actually worked with other organizations, we're not going to talk to them about them at this point, to help them with their co-managed programs. So if you want, reach out, put a comment, subscribe, tell your friends, let me know what it's like if you have friends. And beyond that, we'll catch you at the next episode of Biz Talk Twists. And Kevin, thank you.